In this video, I'll show you how to produce a project performance report or progress report. You can use this template that we've provided for you, or you may have one that you normally use in your workplace that would be fine to use as well. If you're not sure about that, just check with your teacher or your facilitator and make sure that your reporting template will be okay. So at the very top of this template, we've got a distribution list, and all we require here is the name and the position really. You don't need to get a signature, and your distribution list is who this report will end up being sent to. So it might be your supervisor or manager, it could be a client, it could be each member of your project team. You just specify who is going to receive this particular report. Underneath that, we have a section on version control. So for some projects, there's many people producing reports, and we need to keep track of revisions and final versions and that sort of thing. So if this applies to your project, great, fill it in. If it doesn't, just leave it blank. And we don't actually mark you on whether you complete this section. If it doesn't apply to your project, don't worry about it. The next section is a project registration, which is just the details of your project. And I've started this one here for a hotel web design project. So I've given the project its name. It might have a unique identifying number. If so, I would add it in there. If not, I can delete that or leave it blank. Whatever applies to your project, go for that. You record the name and contact details of the project client. This could be your organisation, your department. It could be an external client. It just depends on your project. And then the details of the project manager. So if you're doing a diploma course, this would be you. If you're doing the certificate 4 in project management, then it will probably be someone else. So just take a moment, you can press pause if you like, and just complete that section. Okay, we now move down to the summary dashboard, and the most important thing to know about this is we're doing this performance report at a point in time where the project is still running. So if your project's actually finished or technically finished, you don't do this report at the finishing point. You're going to have to pick a point back in time and discuss the issues of your project at that time. So if your project's finished, pick a date where you can easily remember what's going on. This might be when the project was halfway through, 80% through, 90% through, whatever suits you, but just pick a date where the project was still running. If you're lucky enough to be doing your project in real time along with your the schedule of your lessons, your project management lessons, great, you can just put today's date down. So I'm going to put my own date here, so you do the same, put in an enter point and then put in the date. I'm just going to say 12th of the 2nd of 2012 as my, oh my goodness, 2012 as my date. Okay, up here you'll see a schedule area and also a budget area. So if you remember back to our lessons, we covered earned value management. This is looking at earned value management but just a little bit differently. So we're looking at, is the schedule okay, is the budget okay? So the first thing up the top here is you're going to need to identify whether your schedule is behind, on or ahead. So to do that, we look at what was planned versus what was actually done. So in my particular project, I might put in that there was a consultation phase, a development phase for this website, and a launch phase. And by this date that I put in, 12th of the 2nd, all of those things should have been done. The actual work that I've done is a consultation phase. I've started on the development phase, and all I've done on the development phase is the initial concept with the client. So as you can see from this point, I'm actually behind schedule. So I'm just going to highlight that. You can use a number of ways to identify where you are. I've just highlighted. You could handwrite and tick that. You could delete the others. You just bold, make it red, just in any way that will make it stand out and easy for us to mark. Now, the percentage of work complete, you can actually look at your schedule and determine that very exactly. So you go to your Gantt chart, look at the percentage over time and where you sit, or like I'm going to do that now, I'm just going to make a rough estimate. So I'm going to say I'm about 70% through. The remaining work I've got to do is the launch phase and maybe the launch post-test. So after the launch has been done, I do a little test that everything's working okay. So that's what I've got left. Actually, up in development, I've probably got a little bit there. So development is maybe finalising the design. That might be all I have to do there. Okay, we then look over here at the budget side. So again, we're going to have to state whether we're under, on, or over budget. So for this particular project, I have a $12,000 budget. At this date, this point in time, 12th of the 2nd, I'd plan to spend $10,000. So I'm going to pop that in here. The actual amount I've spent is $8,400. And the percentage of budget that comes out to being is 70%. And the remaining budget is 3,600. So as you can see, I'm just putting my comma in, as you can see here, I'm actually okay budget wise. So I can say that I'm on target where the budget's concerned. So now on my summary dashboard, if anyone was just to give it a quick glance, you can see that I'm behind schedule, but I'm on budget. If you have any other notes to make, you can make them in that section. The other thing I might note here is these different phases here. I've said consultation, development, and launch. These come off my WBS. So what it could be handy to do is to include your WBS, and you just write a note. Please find WBS attached, used to determine planned versus actual work, for example. So when you hand in your report, your WBS would be at the back as an appendix, and you can see just as well as I can that all of these are based on that WBS, or you may have done a PBS. It's up to you. Or if you've worded things slightly different in your schedule, you could even include that. Okay, we now get down to a status report. So this is currently where we are in time. I'll just scroll down a little. You can see here that there's going to be a forecasting section, which is what's coming up next. We're not concerned at all about the status here, it's what's coming next. In this section here, we want to know the status, where we are now. So I'm just going to read this to you. It says, record relevant and concise information from the project's commencement through to the reporting date. So the reporting date, I'll just scroll up, is this date here. Go back down here in status. If status is on track, detail the determining factors that have assisted. Now this is really important because we actually mark you on whether you've listed why things are going the way they are. So it's not enough just to say our status is this, our status is that. You need to say why. What's helped, for example, in keeping your budget on track. If status is not on track, detail the determining factors that have been a hindrance. So the other way, if things are not going well, you also want to explain why you think that is. And a way I like to think about this is if I was about to do a project very similar to yours, I might be able to get a hold of your progress report, read your status report, and go, okay, how are they going with the deliverables? Oh my goodness, they're behind. What's going wrong? And based on your report, I can say, right, when we do our planning, I'm going to make sure that we plan for that because these guys had difficulty with it. I want to make sure I plan well and that doesn't happen. So it can be a way to record learnings and sort of analyze how you've been going. In here it says include reference to any of the following, and you can add your own if required. So the first one here is deliverables achieved. So I'm just going to put an enter point there, and the deliverables I've achieved are these. That's the actual work. That's what I'm going to put in here. You may have named your deliverables a little bit differently. That's fine. And I'm just going to just tab in. Actually, I want to put a little bullet point here. I'm just going to tab it in one more. This doesn't really like cutting and pasting very well. And where's development? You're going to go back up there. And I'm just going to put the initial concept in brackets here. There we are. So they're my deliverables achieved. I'm going to change deliverables achieved to black here. It's a good idea to keep your subheadings. That will make it easier for us to mark your work. So I'm just unbolding that one. So deliverables achieved, a consultation, development, and into the initial concept. This is behind schedule as the client has been slow in providing feedback on initial concepts. So there we have a reason as to why it's going slow, and if I were going to plan a similar project in the future, I might want to flag that this can happen and find or create some processes to help clients be able to give me feedback quicker. The next dot point is milestones reached. So we haven't really dealt too much with milestones. If you have got milestones for your project, great, jot them in there. For mine, I don't really have any, so I'm going to delete that out. The next is budget status. So I'm just going to do again an enter point here. I'm going to change budget status to black and bold it just so it stands out, and I'm just going to tab in there one, and I'm going to talk about the budget status. So we're on budget. This is due to receiving the deposit and progress payment on time from the client. So I've done good client management there where the budget's concerned. However, probably need to have better relationship with the client with regards to getting information from them. Down here, quality considerations, I've just got a note here to refer to your quality plan. So when you did your planning, you initially did a plan for your quality. So at this point you want to talk about how that's going. Again, it's a status report. So as of the date, let's just flick up here quietly. 12th of the 2nd, 2012, I look at my quality plan, what quality issues have come up, if any, and I just talk about that there. Under team performance, here I've got a note for you to refer to your team plan, and in your project plan you would have had a section on the skills audit and a training plan, so you would talk about how that's going, if some training's been done or still pending. You'd mention how your team is performing, are there any conflicts. You might recall the little model we used by Tuckman, which was forming, storming, norming, performing and adjourning. You might make a comment about where you are in that team development model and how it's going according to that. If you're managing, maybe how the management's going. Yeah, any leadership or management skills that have been useful, you might record that there as well. Under stakeholder management, this is about how you're managing your relationships with your stakeholders. So for example, do you have management support? Is there conflict between stakeholders or with stakeholders? Are they interacting with the project suitably? Just talking about how those relationships are going. Underneath that, you've got the communication dissemination. So this refers specifically to your communication plan. So in your project plan, you produced a communication plan, you wrote one, you know, when things were going to go out and who they were going to go out to. There might be weekly team meetings or something like that. And you just want to report on how that's going. Are key communications going out as planned? How are they being received? Is your communication plan comprehensive enough? If you were to do it again, would you include more communications? So again, what's the status of your communications to this point? Some get a little bit confused between stakeholder management and communication dissemination. So just to repeat, your stakeholder management is more your relationship with stakeholders. Are you getting the support you need? Are they all coming to meetings? Are they helping you do the project, or are they hindering things? Whereas your communication is purely based on the communication plan that had key dates and things of when communications were going to go out. The next is risks managed, and here you look back at your risk management plan. So you pull open your project plan, look at how you plan for risks, what risks have actually materialized and how have you handled them. Sometimes you might have done all this great risk planning and none of these risks popped up at all, so you just make a comment of that. Otherwise you might have been bombarded with all these risks you didn't even think of, so then you would have a bit of a chat about that and maybe make a recommendation about the future, and that the next time you do a project like this you'll include these other certain risks. The last one here is contract and supplier progress. So once again, you revisit your project plan, have a look at your procurement plan, and just discuss how the contracting and the supplier relationships are going. So what's been supplied? Has it been supplied on time? Are people meeting their contractual obligations? Have there been any issues, conflicts? Is the quality okay in accordance with what you've asked from suppliers? So you're just talking about, again, the status of where you are as of your reporting date on those supplier relationships. So that covers off the status section. So this is the where you are now. So you might just want to pause this video or stop this video for a little while, complete that section, and then we'll come into the last section, which is on forecasting. The last section of your performance report is on forecasting. So here we're not worried about where we are now, we're worried about what's left of the project. So I'm just going to scroll up here and we can see here that at the moment I'm 70% complete. So what I'm going to talk about here is the remaining work, that last 30%, the development, the launch and the launch post test. I'm not concerned at all with what's been done. This is purely about forecasting what's left. So down I go. The first part here is on key risks, and this says what lies ahead that may affect you. Identify the key risks going forward for each section: scope, time, cost and quality. So again, you might want to visit your risk plan, see if there's anything really key coming up in that risk plan for this last part of your project or this next part of your project. Underneath that, you've got your project forecast, and this says where are you going to end up compared to where you said you would end up in relation to scope, time, cost and quality. So for example, in my website design project, the customer may decide to add in some more multimedia design, or they may want an extra 10 pages or something like that. So here under the scope section, I'd talk about all this additional stuff that this client wants and how that's going to blow the scope out. In contrast, the client may have decided to go from a 10-page website down to a 5-page website, and here I would just discuss that the scope has changed, it's been decreased, and that there will be impacts on time, cost, quality and other things. Your scope may be scheduled to go ahead as planned originally, and if that's the case, you just mention that the scope, no change to scope is anticipated or something like that. Under the time one, here we're talking about your schedule and you're forecasting whether you're going to finish ahead of time, behind time, on time. So if I scroll up to my schedule at current, I was behind. So I'm going to be making a comment as to whether I'm going to remain behind schedule, whether I'm going to be able to catch up and finish on schedule or even ahead of schedule. So they're the sorts of things I would talk about here. If everything's going according to plan for you, you might just make the comment that the schedule is estimated for completion on time, or just make a statement like that. It shouldn't be war or peace, just a sentence or so to sum up where you're at, what you think is going to happen for the last part of this project. Under cost, again, just reviewing up the top here, I've said my budget's on track at the moment. So you're going to discuss, I would be discussing anyway, whether it's going to stay on track. That's yours might be behind or ahead or under, and you would be discussing that there, whether you think it's going to remain remain over budget or remain under budget, or whether the budget and costs should end up being on track. And the same here with quality. So if you think for the remainder of the project quality is going to be an issue, if it's going to be fine, again you might review your quality plan and what things are left for your project, and make a bit of a statement as to how you think the project's going to finish up. So that's your forecasting section. It's fairly quick and brief. It shouldn't take you a long time to complete. The last section is just an authorization here, a sign off. So you just record the name, you don't need a signature, of all the appropriate stakeholders signing this performance report. So if you need to get management signatures on things, as some organisations do, this template allows you to do it. But for our assessment purposes, our marking purposes, we don't need a signature. Under updates, you record confirmation the following documents have been amended in line with the performance report. So because for example, my schedule is behind, I should have, as an update here, a revised schedule that shows what's going to happen in view of the client being slow to give me what I needed, and therefore the impact on the project. So if your project's had any updates to schedules, or maybe you've got a change control process that you've put in place and it's actually been utilised, there's been some changes, you've used those documents, you might include those here. Could be project variations, things like that. Lastly, there's the opportunity to put appendices, or some people call this attachments. So record the details of any other information or documentation supporting the performance report. So for example, in mine I should have in here the WBS that I produced for this particular web design project. And there may be other things, but that's the only thing that really comes to my mind according to this. I mean, I could include some emails showing where I've asked a client for things and they've been late in giving them to me, just as further support as to why I'm behind schedule, especially if it was a tricky project, or those sort of things were very delicate, and I wanted to make sure people understood I'd done everything I can to keep the project on track and it wasn't clearly not my fault that the project slipped behind, I may include that supporting documentation as an appendices or an attachment. So that's a progress report. You can finalise that at your leisure, submit it through the online learning portal, or if you have any questions, need any assistance, just contact your teacher or facilitator.